Hey you guys, this is a change in scenery, but I recently hit 100,000 subscribers, so I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I mean, walking through park is, I guess is groundbreaking for this channel because I'm usually just inside knitting for forever. So I figured I'd take you with me, and I put out a call for questions like a month ago, and I'm only just now getting around to doing this video. So I'm gonna answer some questions. I don't really know what else I'm gonna do. This video might turn into other things. I have no idea. This is mainly just to say thank you for supporting the channel. I had no expectations of hitting 100,000, which is crazy. I actually hit it a couple months ago, I think at the start of the year. So that's been really cool. And yeah, so let's answer some questions. First question is from Salia, who asks, what's your favorite knitting project and why? This is the most liked question on my little post, and I don't really have a good answer for it. I don't really have a favorite project that I've done. My favorites tend to be the ones that are more like, I guess, sentimental. Like the first time you knit a scarf, or the first time you knit a hat or a sweater. Like those are the ones that you're always like the most proud of. And so I guess those always tend to be kind of my favorites. The messy beginner projects that you do. I also like just the practical stuff that you actually wear. So like this hat is nothing special, but I wear it all the time, so it's my favorite hat. Actually, I have to say that those Tetris blocks that I did in my last video, were kind of like, not my favorite, but they were like one of the top things that I've done. And also I gave them to my niece, so I get pictures of her playing with them, and it's just kind of adorable. So I think those ones are the best. Next question is from Keep It Real Cora, who asks, do you get carpal tunnel from all the tight stitch knitting you have to do? What do you do to treat it? By the way, I love your videos. Well, thank you very much, Cora. I don't really get carpal tunnel. I guess that comes, you feel that in your fingertips from like pinching the needles really hard. I guess I sometimes do feel a little pain if I'm doing like a lot of tight stitch knitting. The more pain I feel is in my wrists. So like I get that more in like after like my marathon knitting videos. I'm always kind of like take breaks to just kind of stretch out my wrists. I think something that prevents a lot of aches and pains, I guess, from knitting is switching up your knitting styles. So I always just try to switch how I'm knitting. So if I'm doing a lot of continental, I'll always kind of switch to English style, and I'm pretty comfortable with both. So I'm always kind of switching back and forth between the two. My main bad thing is just my overall posture is terrible. So like you even see it in my videos, like after a lot of knitting, my shoulders will be like up to here and my neck disappears, and my back is like just dead for a day. Next question is from Daniel, who asks, what drew you to start knitting? Does it ever bother you that it's considered feminine? Why do we even gender crafts? Shaking my head. It's a good question. I don't really know what drew me to knitting. I think I've just always been kind of like a crafty person, and I've always kind of liked doing little art projects and things like that. I've always drawn, and I've been interested in animation and all that. I remember when I was really little, my grandma taught me how to quilt and sew, and so I think knitting is just a natural progression from there. I think what I like most about knitting is that you're creating, like, I guess a piece of art, but it has a function, and so you can wear it and use it, which I guess is the definition of arts and crafts or folk art. And to your second part of that question, it doesn't really bother me that knitting is considered feminine, I guess. I guess I just don't really care. Like, it's 2021, and there's like so many more important things to worry about than whether or not you look cool knitting or if it's considered girly. It is weird that we even still think like that, but I guess it goes back to like hunter-gatherer times when the men would go and hunt and the women would stay and weave. I would probably stay and weave. But now we're pretty much like all the same. Like we're all doing the same thing. Like everyone's, for the most part, just kind of sitting behind computers typing. So I think anything that gets you out of that trap all day is a good thing. Next question is from Anissa, who asks, can you please show us what's in your knitting kit and from what company? So here's what's in my bag. My bag is just a pillowcase, a really sad, worn out pillowcase. And as you can see, I just kind of stuff everything in here. So it's full of like half-finished projects. I don't know why there's a Super Nintendo in here. I'll try to give you a tour here. So a lot of the yarn that I use is like the cheap and cheerful stuff. So in my tutorials that I do, like a lot of it's just throwaway projects. So I do just a lot of like throwaway simple yarn. So I have a lot of like these little things. I have a lot of this super soft polyester yarn that I don't know what to do with. It's like plush, like baby blanket material almost, but it's really kind of weak yarn. It kind of breaks apart and starts shedding all over the place. I also have this strange yarn from a Japanese company, and it's like the material is the strangest material in the world. I was gifted this, and it's like, it's almost like t-shirt yarn or like I-cord, but it's not. It's just like super tiny woven fabric. It's already been like, it's knitted almost, and it knits a really, I don't know if I like, wait, was this the yarn? No, that's not even the yarn. I knitted a swatch once with this material just to see what it would look like. Here it is. So it knits this weird fabric that's like not comfortable. It's almost, I guess it feels kind of like a sock material, but not even as soft, and it feels kind of rough and weird. So I've just still got these. I've had them for years and I've never figured out what to do with them. I have a lot of just like failed swatches and experiments. So this is like, I was knitting with 2 types of yarn here. I also went through a weird embroidery phase. This is my little test dummy. So I did like it's a glass of water with an orange behind it. And then on the flip side, I did a crushed pop can. In here I keep all my little tiny needles. So I've got a whole bunch of double pointed needles in here, circular knitting needles, pom-pom makers. And this is a sewing kit for little tiny things, little sewing kit stuff. And then like my cable knitting needles. This is too obvious. So I'm gonna finish up these questions just rapid fire. Ochiraka asks another question about warming up your wrists and fingers, and I honestly don't have anything to tell you. Crack your knuckles a lot. Bonnie says, I tried knitting in the round and found it very difficult. Could you give tips related to that, and also how to fix it when you drop a stitch on accident? Well, I have a whole video on how to knit in the round. I don't really have like tips on how to do it. I think one thing you should consider is how you're knitting in the round, if you're doing it on a circular knitting needle or if you're doing it on double pointed needles. I find that when you're first learning how to knit in the round, circular knitting needles are probably the easiest way of learning. DPNs can get a little overwhelming sometimes. As for how to fix a stitch on accident, all you do is you pull up the stitch, take a little needle or like a crochet hook, and you take the stitch that's dropped and you pull it up through the different rows, and you just kind of like weave it. You pick up the different rows depending on how far you've dropped it, and then you just put it back on your needle and you keep knitting. E says, congratulations, can you explain how gauging works? No, I wish somebody would, because I suck at it. Gauging, essentially it will say on the yarn how much, what a typical swatch will yield when you knit like a 10 by 10 square or whatever. And you should always, I guess, do a test swatch before you start a project, because you don't know how that particular yarn is going to knit up, because everybody holds their needles different. Everybody has different tightnesses, I guess. There's people who probably are really knowledgeable about that are more knowledgeable than me. She also says, talk about round needles versus plain straight needles. Round needles are for circular projects, hats, sweaters, and plain straight needles are for scarves. you'll knit a million scarves. Also, who or what got you into knitting? Do you have a favorite show, podcast to listen to? Oh, and also, can you talk about your book, Inspiration, if there's any crossover with your life, the process you went through to publish it? My book is out in 2 months, 1 month almost, 13th of May. Disassembled Duran Duran. Here's the advanced copy proof. The actual thing when it's published will be hardback, the copy that you will receive once you've pre-ordered it. Hopefully you already have. The book is about what happens when you don't do what you're supposed to do. It's about consequences for your actions, but in a very intense way. It's kind of a thriller, it's kind of a mystery, it's a little weird. Links are below in the description. Kanita asks, when will you make more knitting videos? I get this question all the time. People always comment, oh, you're back, or where'd you go? And like, just because I'm not posting a video every week, or every month, or every 3 months sometimes, doesn't mean that I've gone away. It's just, I've got other stuff going on, okay? Aisha says, hi man, you are amazing. I want to know that I have seen some people holding one knitting stick with crochet stick. What is it? I think that's just crochet. Bethany says, I watch your video on how to turn a heel almost every time I try to make a sock. It works and it's simple. Thank you. I do the exact same thing. I watch my own videos all the time. Lori Lynette says, love you to bits, and how do you find your knitting inspiration? 100K because you're fab. Thank you, Lori. You're very fab as well. My knitting inspiration comes from, I don't know, just wanting to try new things. I always, you want to learn how to knit a sweater, so you learn how to knit a sweater. I really love cables. Like, I don't really use Pinterest that often, but if I see something on Instagram or Pinterest and if it's got tons of crazy cables, then I'm like immediately wanting to start my own project and do something with cables. How do you fix a drop stitch? Already said. Can you add stitches or like borders on your scarf after you finish making it? Yeah, why not? Do you have any motivational messages / advice for beginners? Just remember that it's arts and crafts. It's not rocket science. It's like basic, it's simple. Like there's no rules. There's literally no rules. People like to pretend that there are a lot of rules for knitting, but there's literally not. Anedonia says, you've truly made me a better knitter. Who are your YouTube go-tos? And my advice for YouTube is to dig deep when you're looking for help. There's a lot of like the standard channels. Mine might be one of them. But I mean, dig deeper. The most helpful YouTube tutorials that I've ever watched are the ones that are just like someone with their iPhone, it's shaky and the lighting is crazy, but they're just like showing you how to do something. And those I find are the most informative videos. And those are actually the ones that have inspired me the most to do YouTube in the first place, just because I love seeing it as a public utility, like as a tool to help other people learn things. So I'm not all about the glitzy, flashy stuff. That's fun to do from like a creative perspective, but I think the most helpful videos are the ones who are not driven by that, but they're driven by just wanting to help people and show them the best way of doing something. When I search how to do something on YouTube, you go through a couple pages of results before you find someone good. And you'll find someone with like 3 subscribers with one video from like 10 years ago, and it's gonna end up being the most helpful video, I promise. So that's pretty much all of them. Thank you very much for your questions. I'll do this again in 5 years, because that's when I did my last Q&A.
First, I want to say a very cheesy thank you to everyone who has liked and commented and subscribed and followed the channel. I honestly could not have done it or had the success that I've had without the support of you guys. So thank you so much. I decided to do a little Q&A to celebrate, so I combed through a lot of the comments and the emails that I get.
I had a lot more hair back then.